Now, there's growing pressure for the next federal government to follow countries like the US in banning pelvic mesh devices. Thousands of women and some men have sought billions of dollars in claims after using the implants.
I'm sure you're aware of the backstory of this, and there have been some legal cases brought and some compensation sought as well. Justine Watson is a psychotherapist who set up the charity Mesh Injured Australia for people like herself who have had shocking experiences with the devices, and she joins us now from Sydney. Good morning, and great to have you with us. Would you like just briefly to share your story of the pelvic mesh implant and how that's absolutely changed your life?
Good morning. Thank you for having me this morning. Yes, I had a pelvic mesh implant in 2010 for stress urinary incontinence. That's the mesh that hasn't been banned.
Yep.
And by 2013, recurrent infections. 2015, I couldn't get out of bed. 2017, I discovered the cause of my illness and systemic illnesses and the chronic pain that I was suffering. And I had to go to America to the world leading expert to have it removed, and it took 8.5 hours to get it out of my body.
And there are other aspects to your personal story that are just so upsetting as well, including an attempt on your own life as well.
Yes, that's how I was driven. I was driven to not be a sick person anymore because of the odds the Australian surgeon gave me, which was a permanent catheter for the rest of my life and multiple surgeries if he could remove it.
Look, it's such a complicated area because notwithstanding your story and stories of so many other women, we still have from the TGA, the Therapeutic Goods Association here in Australia, when it comes to the use of pelvic mesh implants, there are guidelines, recommendations about, following up, research, recording of ailments and problems, tracking devices. But for many of you who have gone through this, that's not nearly far enough, is it?
Well, it's nothing for us. What we know is the next medical disaster is around the corner if the next government doesn't reform the health system. We need changes in informed consent, mandatory reporting, patient risk-benefit analysis. We need upgrades with the TGA. We need class 3, 4 and 5 implants. We need them to be tracked. But it's all very well that they want to track the, Greg Hunt gave $2.3 million to a prospective database so he could now watch the carnage unfold with women who are being implanted today and in the future. But that does nothing for the women who are stuck in wheelchairs, can't care for their children, and their relationships. 30% of our community's relationships break down. 25% are still able to work only after they've had their mesh implant. This is a national disgrace.
Well, look, again, it's complicated because then there are those who don't get a bad side effect and would hate to see all of those implants banned. Are you talking about that this morning?
Look, there is a place for this. It's just not in the pelvis of a young, fit, healthy mother.
So where is the proper place for it then? I mean, and we need to say here, you're not a doctor, of course.
Absolutely, I'm not a doctor, but I have seen way too many young, fit, healthy women become needing lifelong care and becoming disabled from this implant. So we do have another alternative. It's called native tissue repair. And we need the surgeons to go back to the old method in order to preserve the health of women moving forward. We need better guidelines. We need more research. Why did this happen to a percentage of us? And the percentage is way too high.
And that's why we're talking about it today, because as I understand, it's Pelvic Mesh Awareness Day today. And so when we talk about all of the complicated aspects of those for whom it works, for whom it doesn't work, is that where the discussion needs to go now, where perhaps victims like yourself and those who are raising awareness and trying to support others, you need to start a conversation with the medical community about whether they might try other techniques?
We are in conversations with the medical community. Sadly, if you'd spent 10, 20 years of your career implanting a device that had potentially, ruined the lives of women, it's a pretty tough pill to swallow.
Sure.
So medical cultural change needs to happen. Informed consent needs to be carried out better. We need this to be monitored better and rolled out better so that we don't have the damage that we're seeing at Mesh Injured Australia.
And Justine Watson, then a final question today, and it's a difficult one to ask and answer. Given that that's potentially the consequence, the pain, the damage, the infection, the disability caused for some people by using the pelvic mesh, is there an argument then for informed consent to include a discussion about living with incontinence instead?
Absolutely there is, and there are lots of other aids. There are pessaries, there's pelvic floor physio, there's dietary changes, weight loss. There's a plethora of hoops that one should jump through before one decides to go under the knife.
Justine, really interesting talking to you today. Thanks for bringing your conversation here. Thank you.
Thank you so much.